Well, I know that it's 4 minutes before the hour of 2. I'm going to go ahead and get started. Wanted just to share with everyone that this is Childbirth Today news, the first, I think, of its kind on the internet. My name's Connie Livingston, and I'm the owner of birthsource.com. That's the website. The company name is Perinatal Education Associates. We've been serving parents and professionals for about 17 years now. Started in 1999, and we are a company that has an informational website with information from, it's evidence-based information for parents and professionals. We also have an online store with items that childbirth educators, doulas, and hospitals can purchase. And we exhibit at some of the conferences around the U.S. So you may see our bright yellow tablecloth in the exhibit hall. The reason why I started this blab actually is because of Betsy Schwartz. She is the creator of Down the Canal, and she invited me to be on her show last week. And it was really fun, and the format that we're on right now is called Blab, and it's a beta-tested platform, which means not all the bugs are out of it yet. So forgive us if there's something that's not quite right, if something that's that hangs up. That's not the intent. The intent is to have a very smooth show today. Our first guest that will come on about 2:15 is Jen Camel, and many of you know her as the owner of VBACFacts.com. So we'll have her on about 2:15 or so. She'll be my co-host for the day, providing I can figure out how to do that. I hope that that's not hindered at all to get her on as a co-host. She is texting me occasionally or Facebooking, so hopefully we can work that out before the 2:15 hour. Some of the news that's going around in terms of childbirth in the news today. I get a lot of news feed in my email box. I get probably 300 to 400 news items every day in my inbox. And some of them are evidence-based information, and some of them is just an update on what the Kardashians are doing at the moment or other celebrities. But one of the things that I did want to bring to your attention, although that it's towards the end of the month, is that it's Cesarean Prevention Month. And let's see, I think it was Consumer Reports that had a GIF that was on Facebook. It started out, what has gone up 500% since 1970? And that's cesarean section rates. And right now in the United States, the C-section rate is 32.7. And the problem here is that our infant mortality and morbidity rates are not going down. The more interventions that are being used, the worse our success rate is, basically. And, we can say safe words or big words that people may have a hard time understanding, like maternal infant morbidity and mortality. But the bottom line is that American women and American babies are dying. That's what mortality means. And I think that we as consumers of healthcare, and also we as professionals, whether we are nurses like myself, whether we are childbirth educators, doulas, lactation consultants, no matter what our profession is in terms of maternity care, we have an obligation to get the evidence out there to expectant parents so that they have the information. So when it comes down to that moment in time, when a parent has to make an informed decision, they know what all the alternatives are. They know that they know what their options are. I think it was Roberta Scare or Diana Court that said, if you don't know that you have options, then you really don't have any. And I'm afraid that with such a low number of expectant parents attending childbirth education classes these days, I'm afraid that parents don't know what their options are. And so the Cesarean Prevention Month is a huge, not necessarily a celebration, but it's an awareness month to make sure that everyone realizes what the impact is on maternity care. It raises maternity care costs, and it's basically not good for our society. So, and that's borne out in all the statistics. Now, if you're not a research person, if you don't like to dig through all of the journal articles and look at all the statistics, one place that you can go for a very easy 20-minute overview of statistics in the US. On YouTube, you can look for Birth by the Numbers. And Birth by the Numbers is a project that was started by Dr. Eugene de Cleric, and he is a professor of public health at Boston University. And Dr. de Cleric has done several of these videos, and he takes the really hard to understand, kind of boring, information, and puts it into a understandable format. He puts it into a YouTube video, and if you've ever had a chance to see him speak at conferences, it's really wonderful. He kind of adds humor to all of the hard to understand statistical data. And so he has these series of videos on YouTube, and so he has taken and he breaks it down. And then also, if you go to their website, Birth by the Numbers website, they have PowerPoints that you can download some of the graphics and some of the ideas so that you can then use them in your own presentations, whether or not you're presenting to expected parents. I think that some of the statistics might be hard for them to grasp. Golly, it's hard for some of us to grab. So he kind of helps to decipher some of that information and makes it usable for us. I've seen on Facebook the last few days where it looks like there's a shaming going on of hospitals, and based on the cesarean section rate at the hospitals. And one thing you have to understand about statistics from a hospital is that those statistics are a culmination of all of the physicians that practice there. So if you have a hospital who have many high-risk physicians that handle high-risk births, then you're probably going to get a higher cesarean section rate at that hospital than you do over at this other hospital where they do not have that. So that's one thing that you have to be very careful of. The other thing when you look at statistics by physician is the types of clients he has. Does he take all types of clients, or does she take high-risk clients? So if she's taking the large majority of high-risk individuals in that community, of course her C-section rate could be a lot higher than other people in that community. So to make a blanket statement is kind of hazardous, because you really don't know what the background is there right then. I'm getting, okay. For some reason, our co-host is blocked, and I need to figure out how to unblock her. Again, like I said, this is a beta version, and I'm not exactly sure how make sure that okay, now why did she get blocked? Sorry about that, guys. It's kind of a learning curve for me too, so just bear with me. And I'm trying also to get another co-host on here too. See how that works as well. Anyway, to go on. One thing that there you are.
Hello.
Hi. Now, how did that work? I'm a little confused as to how that actually happened. I've been dragging and doing all kinds of things. What actually worked?
I just called in.
Okay. Okay. And you also said that Jen is blocked?
She said she's blocked and she's texting you on Facebook.
Okay. Click on my picture at the top of the screen and there is a red triangle and a red exclamation point. Huh. I don't have that.
I don't even have her picture at the top of my screen.
Yeah, I don't either. So that is going to also be a little problematic there. All right, try that. See if that worked. See if that worked, Jen. Okay, she's calling in now. So hopefully that'll work too. Okay, so we were talking about Cesarean Prevention Month, and I just wanted to let everybody also know that the California Maternal Quality Care Collaborative will be posting a new toolkit soon to support vaginal birth and reduce primary cesarean rates. And this toolkit, as well as the VBAC education project that is available on the ICANN, which is the International Cesarean Awareness Network website, ICEA, which is International Childbirth Education Association, and also on VBAC.com. That's the website for Niset Jakelovics, and we're going to have Niset on the show in mid-May. The California Toolkit, if you Google California Toolkit for birth, you can find that relatively easily. Like I said, it's not out as yet, but it will soon be here. So that's kind of exciting,
Just want to say Jen's still having problems getting in. So I'm going to see if I can troubleshoot with her. But I don't have anything on my screen to... I don't have any controls on my screen. You have all the controls.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out where that. Have her try again.
I'm going to have her try rebooting her computer because that worked for me before.
Good idea. Good idea. So while we're waiting on Jen to get in, and I'm apologizing for the technical difficulties. I just wanted to kind of open a conversation too with everybody about the Zika virus. I don't know about you, but I'm getting a lot of information that's not consistent with the symptoms and the treatment and the prevention. I'm sorry, did you want to say something?
I just wrote a paper on it recently for one of my classes. So up to about a week and a half ago, I'm pretty current with what the CDC and the WHO have been saying.
Okay. What is their stance right now?
In terms of what specific?
Well, as far as symptoms and treatment, and also I noticed that there was an article that came out just this morning, and I think that was I want to say it was on CNN that said that now they have confirmation that it can be transmitted by sex.
Well, I think they've known that for a while, that it's able to be transmitted from men to women and from men to men. I don't know if they were talking about female to male transfer, because up until 2 weeks ago, that hadn't been confirmed.
Okay. Now, how likely is that to come all the way up to the United States? I mean, I know that there's been travel notices for Mexico and the Caribbean, the Pacific Islands, and South America, but we have warm climates too. And can it get far?
It is actually possible for it to travel pretty extensively throughout the United States. And the reason for that is because the virus is transmitted by 3 types of mosquitoes. There's Aedes aegypti, which is the main one that's hitting South America. And we have Aedes aegypti in the southern part of the United States. It's in Florida, it's in Texas, it's across really the whole southern and up into parts of the Midwest. And then there's the Aedes albopictus, which comes all the way, actually, I'm in Connecticut, it comes halfway up into Connecticut. So it comes pretty far north. Mm-hmm. And the virus can be transmitted by either 2 of those varieties of mosquitoes. So it can come pretty extensively into the United States. So what the CDC and what the World Health Organization says that what you can do in your local community is make sure around your home that all containers of water, even small cups of water, anything where water pools, drain those pools where water gathers. So if you have like old tires in your yard, that's a place where water gathers, or containers that collect rainwater. You want to be really careful about that. Make sure that your garbage is covered, and try to control the growth of mosquitoes in your microenvironment in that way. And then be really careful about using bug spray with DEET, being consistent about that. Really, the virus itself it's a flu-like virus. Most people, it's like getting getting a case of the flu. So for most people, it might put you out of work for a couple of days. You get a fever, joint pain, rash, but people rarely go to the hospital for it. The Zika fever itself is not the big concern. The big concern is women who are pregnant.
Okay.
So protecting yourself from mosquito bites, that can help you, but it's really pregnant women that need to be concerned. The other concern is if obviously half of pregnancies in the United States are unplanned. So the other concern is that if a man gets the virus, can he can transfer it to his partner, who may get pregnant unexpectedly. And the virus can stay in the semen for, they know, as far as 10 weeks. So it might leave the bloodstream, you get the virus, you have maybe a week of being sick, it leaves the bloodstream, but the virus can stay active in the semen for they know, as far as 10 weeks. So an unexpected pregnancy, even weeks after a sex partner has been infected by the virus, can also put women at risk.
Wow. Now, we just kind of started and you popped in and we didn't introduce you to everybody. I think we have I'm reading 102 people listening. So do you want to introduce yourself?
I'm Michal Klaus-Stevens. I'm known as the Birth Lady.
And do you have a website you want to promote?
Oh, thank you. It's thebirthlady.info.
Great.
And
Great.
I help expectant parents learn how to navigate the maternity care system.
Awesome. Like awesome. That's great. Now I had one other question. So
Whoa, you dropped out, Connie. Come on back. Here she comes.
oh, gotta love beta versions. Because you've just written this paper on it, is it conclusive that it will cause microencephaly?
When I was doing my research, which I wrote the paper, I handed it in a week ago. The day I handed it in, I was told by somebody else that the CDC had confirmed that the connection has been made between Zika and microcephaly. But I haven't actually looked at that research myself to see what it says.
Yeah, because I know that was one of the areas where there was some controversy, and I don't want to leave people with the idea that it absolutely does, but there certainly are markers that will lead us to think that. So, like you said, I don't think it's been confirmed yet.
Yeah. So, I mean, I could go back and look at the research and see. I think the CDC has said that, yes, it is confirmed that having Zika during pregnancy can lead to microcephaly.
Okay.
Yeah. And the research that I saw was that there were a couple cases, they have to autopsy the babies after they die. And they found that the Zika virus was present in their brains. Okay. So, I think that they already had some research, but they were holding off until they had, I think, more to confirm it. But the research that I read was pretty clear already at that point.
Okay. Have you heard from Jen at all? Has she been able to?
Just finished rebooting her computer and she's trying again.
Okay, great. Good. Maybe she can get on at that point.
I think also we're probably going to see a lot more spraying for mosquitoes this spring and summer. I think that that's going to happen, and that makes people nervous. But it's really important, unfortunately.
Right. And there's probably
that's going to be one of the major ways to control the spread of the virus is by these bigger environmental sprays.
Right. And those probably aren't that healthy either, but at some point you have to weigh the option, what's going to be the lesser of two evils, I think.
Yeah.
So.
And I think for pregnant women, the doses of the particular pesticides that they use, and this is another thing, the main pesticide that they use, it doesn't seem to affect people.
Okay.
So it's, generally considered safe around humans. So, I mean.
Well, that's great. That's actually really great that you just wrote a paper on that, because I know that's been all over the news, and I know that there have been travel bans, people who are going to the Caribbean on cruises and things like that. And so I guess the best thing then, and maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but the best thing to do is for them, if they're going to be traveling, go to the CDC website to get the latest notifications and travel notices.
Yeah,
is that
either
the
World Health Organization.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. CDC.gov, and I think it's WHO.in or INT. Just Google World Health Organization and you'll get there. And then maybe even put Zika in there, and you'll get to that right place. Another thing I wanted to just touch base on, and that, we have a lot of flu in the United States right now. And I know that, I don't know if you heard about this, but the CDC issued a mandate. Well, not a mandate, actually. It was more like a intense recommendation, March 18th, that if a mom presents in labor and delivery with the flu, while she's laboring. Once the infant is born, they suggest that mother and baby be separate. And we know that, babies have, they're exposed to the antibodies with the mom and also in the breast milk. And, I don't know. I don't feel good about that. And I think that if babies are breastfeeding, they have those natural antibodies and immunities. So I'm not really sure where they came up with that idea for separating moms and babies. Have you heard about that, Mikal?
I hadn't heard about that. I hadn't. And what's happened in previous years where people have had the flu? They haven't suggested that before.
Now this is rumor, but I heard that when the H1N1 came out a couple of years ago, they said the same thing and then they retracted it. Now, I have not seen a retraction from the March 18th recommendation. So hospitals are still getting that recommendation out there on the labor and delivery units. So I don't know. I think that we need to look into that and see, contact the some of our lactation consultants out there and see what they're thinking about that. Because I don't think that separation of moms and babies would probably be the best thing. I'm going to go out on a limb here, knowing what I know about mother-baby dyad biology, and I just don't think that that's maybe the best thing.
Right. Yeah. It's hard when you have to make choices like that, and we really depend on our care providers to help guide us with those kinds of choices. Right.
And maybe even build that into a birth plan too, because, I know that Betsy Schwartz is going to be talking about birth plans tomorrow on her blab at 10 o'clock. And I just was at a conference. Actually, I spoke at a conference in Indianapolis, Indiana last week where they were talking about birth plans. And I don't know about in other communities, but in some communities, birth plans are like 4-letter words.
Right.
And really, they're a great educational tool for expectant parents and a wonderful communication tool between the expectant parents and the care providers. So, I think that we need to add some of those things maybe to the birth plan and get information into the parents' hands.
Yeah. I would agree with you. I think that having that communication with your care provider, using a birth plan as a tool to enable that communication is a really good way to go. And then the birth plan, when you bring it into the hospital, should really almost be like a quick introduction to your philosophy about how you would like for your birth to go, as opposed to a set of hard and fast, this is what I want, check A, B, or C.
Right, exactly. Or one of the 13-page birth plans that we had on the internet a couple of years ago. They had everything under the sun, including stuff that we hadn't done in like 20 years. So that's hard.
Jen is still having a hard time. She said she rebooted. It's not coming up. Nothing's loading.
Nothing is loading. Yeah. We'll give it a few more minutes, but absolutely we'll ask Jen to come back and if we run out of time and have her come back. Maybe I don't know about your schedule, but I can be on another 15 or 20 minutes, maybe even up to 3 o'clock to see if she can.
I'm going to actually have to leave a few minutes earlier than that.
Okay. If anybody else would like to come on and chat, just let me know and I can invite you to come in and take a seat, and just like the two of us, and we can chat about things. One other thing that I had noticed that was hot in the news this week, UNICEF in the United Kingdom last week published a study on the effectiveness of baby-friendly and the baby-friendly initiative, and found that adherence to baby-friendly standards had a positive effect on breastfeeding rates, reducing childhood infections and improving academic performance. So that means that they have followed these children for several years, which I think is one of the things that a lot of studies don't do. They look at the immediate and they don't look at the long term. And so I'm truly an advocate of baby friendly, and also the WHO code and all of that works together. A second study then also moved beyond the hospital setting in Norway, finding that breastfeeding rates improved for the first 6 months after exposure to baby-friendly initiative regulations or suggestions or whatever. So really, I know that in Connecticut, are there very many baby-friendly hospitals up there?
We have a couple. One of the major big hospitals in Hartford, I'm right near the Hartford area, and one of the big hospitals there is baby-friendly.
Okay. I know that some of the complaints I've heard about baby friendly is it's such an arduous process, and it can be very expensive process. That's from the bean counters, in the hospital systems. But
right.
Then if you look at the positive impact on society, how can you say that would be a waste of dollars or a negative use of dollars? I just don't get that.
Right. Well, and to me, it seems like it's just supporting the natural process, helping women to and babies get started with breastfeeding, setting it up in an optimal way. That just seems that's what hospitals are supposed to be doing in the first place, in my opinion. So to have a program that helps train everybody who's coming in contact with pregnant women, with the laboring moms and new babies, to help them get a really good start to breastfeeding, that just seems to make sense. And then obviously the results speak for themselves.
Right. And I'm kind of a history buff when it comes to birth and breastfeeding. And so when you look at what it used to be in the home birth and the home birth midwives, and as soon as the baby was born, the baby would go right to the chest, and that would initiate breastfeeding. And then when birth moved into the hospital setting, we were all about sterile. And I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done that with my face, but there are times when a sterile field is necessary, but babies should not be kept from moms. And so we're going back to that flu mandate thing. But babies should be kept with mom and on her chest, and all of the miraculous things that happen there, and really help them to initiate breastfeeding so we can have healthier children and healthier moms. And I know what I wanted to ask too, and I'll ask the group. We have I think we're up to 115 people now. Welcome. All of the breast is best, and that made me feel guilty for formula feeding. How does everybody feel about that? I mean, you can't fight fact. Breast milk is made by the mother for that baby at that moment, and
I think that's one of the biggest controversies that we have as parents now, is because I hear a lot of people who bottle feed and who feed formula. It's framed as a choice. It's these days now, it's framed as a lifestyle choice.
Right.
And it's really the way that the formula companies have marketed it to us, and it's become so pervasive that we don't really recognize the public health aspects behind it and just the natural process of it. Like, I think that women at the bottom line, they need to do what's right for them and for their baby. There's so much stacked against women with breastfeeding now, there's really not as much support as women need. And
Right.
so to fault women for it is really not fair. But at the same time, the information that they're working off of is really what's been put out by the formula companies.
Right. And formula is made by pharmaceutical companies. And so you have that whole argument about big pharma and all of that. We got a comment from Deanna Sterling, and she said, our role as an educator is to ensure that they, I think she meant expected parents, have credible and unbiased information so that they can make the best decision for themselves. And, that goes across the board as far as whatever decision she's making, including how to feed her baby. But again, you can't fault the findings, that breast is best. And occasionally you do have to formula feed. There are occasions for that. So,
right. I think that we need to be talking to women about this way, way earlier. Like, we need to be talking to high school students, junior high students. My 5th grader is going to be taking health class starting up. The girls should be learning about how their bodies produce milk when they have kids. And,
right.
Your body's made to do it. And there are people who can help you if you have difficulties with it. And that it has to start that early, because what we get from the media is so deeply ingrained. And a lot of what I do is teaching people to understand this bigger system that exists outside of what your personal experience of pregnancy and birth is. So when you recognize what's happening in the hospital system, or you recognize how does the media affect our attitudes about breastfeeding, where do those ideas come from, and how does our work life play into all of these decisions? And I try to help people deconstruct some of the larger societal ways that we look at it, so that they can pull it down to get a much clearer understanding of where some of these ideas came from. Right. And when you break it down that way, you start to see, oh, this is really about money. It's about power. It's about maintaining people in certain positions of authority and privilege. And, and I think that when women understand that all of those things go into it, they can look at the whole question of how do I want to feed my baby? They can look at it a little bit differently.
Right. And I think we sound a little like conspiracy theorists when we say that, it's all about money and all of this, and it gets very scary. But, in other communities where I've lived, because we've lived in a lot of different communities, some of the hospitals that I've worked at, the formula companies will say, okay, here's our formula packs, and would you please hand these out? And the hospital is beholden to them, because maybe that company gave them a whole new neonatal intensive care unit wing, or oh my goodness, I think Jen has finally got in. I think this is going to happen. Okay, let me finish my thought. Or they send certain nurses to conferences. And so there is money there, and there is an obligation by the hospital to reciprocate with that company. So, and it's
billions of dollars. It's not small donations. We're talking about billions of dollars a year that the formula companies put towards doing that kind of marketing. And it's when you think that the majority of breastfeeding information that doctors get is from conferences that are put on by formula companies.
Exactly.
Hello.
Oh my, you made it.
Oh my gosh. That was such a process. You know what it was? I had to log in through Twitter, not Facebook. Facebook wouldn't let me in, but Twitter.
Yeah,
that okay.
Because Blab is connected with Twitter.
Well, and it's also connected to Facebook, but we can talk a lot about technical difficulties, but I would love to talk about something a little bit more interesting. How about you ladies? I could hear some of your conversation. I was like, I want to be on the screen.
Well, I am so glad that the technical gods finally shined on us today, and that we can have you on today. For everybody that's watching, and oh my goodness, yes,
I even put hairspray in my hair. You can tell how effective that is. I've got the Charlie Brown hair. Look at that. It was totally fluffy 30 minutes ago. But see, that's what happens with technical difficulties.
Marvelous, darling.
You do look marvelous. You do look great. We have about 120 people watching right now, which is really great. So they're probably all wanting to hear. So without further ado, the latest person in our little quadrant of faces here, talking heads, is Jen Camel. And Jen has been a consumer advocate and national speaker since she founded VBAC Facts nearly a decade ago. And in that time, she's traveled the country as a California Board of Registered Nursing continuing education provider, presenting her program, The Truth About Vaginal Birth After Cesarean. And she's spoken at national conferences, including DONA, Lamaze, ICANN, and Human Rights in Childbirth. And she's been a featured guest on numerous radio shows and podcasts. And she finally made it today. So yay!
Yay! It's all very exciting.
So go ahead and tell us how VBAC Facts got started.
Well, I started VBAC Facts 8 years ago after my own VBAC, but I was really transformed into a consumer advocate 4 years prior when I had my own cesarean. And I remember how scared I was in that moment. Having a cesarean was not how I envisioned having my first child. She was breech, and despite planning a hospital birth with a midwife, there I was with a painful incision on my abdomen. Despite all my reading, all my research, all my positive thinking, and making what I thought were all the right decisions.
So when exactly did you learn that the baby was breech then?
Well, at 35 weeks, my midwife noted that she was laying transverse in my abdomen. So she was like back and forth instead of up and down. She was already a non-compliant child. I think this is very indicative of her entire personality. Because now she's tweeting all over the place, right? She's 12 and it's crazy. So my midwife said it was very likely that she would turn head down because only 3 to 4% of babies are breech at term. And I thought, surely I wouldn't be that number. And but by 37 weeks, my stubborn little girl was now frank breech. So she had her bottom down and her head and feet up. And so there was my, so at this point, there was a 1 in 10 chance that she would turn head down and a 9 in 10 chance that she wouldn't. And so the odds were against me. I started to feel really desperate and time was running out.
So what did you do then?
Well, I had already been seeing a chiropractor who specialized in the Webster technique for a few weeks, trying to get her to change. And then I just started Google fooing all the ways to turn a malpositioned baby. We did the yoga positions. I avoided our comfy sofa and sat on the hard floor. I put my butt in the air with my head on the floor. We talked to the baby. We did the frozen peas, the flashlights, the visualization, the music. I mean, we did it all, but nothing worked.
So I know that there's a technique called external version. Did your doctor try to turn the baby?
Yes, I was really willing to do anything to avoid a C-section. And so when they offered me that opportunity, I signed up for it. So at 38 weeks, I went to the hospital and they gave it a try, but that didn't work either. My daughter, did I mention she was stubborn? So she was very stubborn and she wouldn't turn. So all of my plans of a normal vaginal delivery just flew out the window. And I received my scheduled cesarean date on the little Xerox paper that's been copied a billion times. And I went out to Thai food with my mom and mother-in-law. And in the midst of all my favorite food, I just sat there and very demurely and tried not to be too conspicuously cried.
So these weren't happy tears. You weren't relieved to have a cesarean then, right?
No, up to that point, the most evasive medical procedure I had had was my wisdom teeth removed in high school. So I was really scared of just having surgery, period. I mean, whether it was a C-section or any other kind of surgery, that just kind of freaked me out. And so my mom and my mother-in-law really tried to cheer me up, and I completely appreciated their intention. But what I really needed was validation. I needed to hear that it was okay for me to be excited to meet my baby, but also scared and disappointed about how that was happening. And I think, and I experience this to this day, parents are denied the nuance of emotion. You either need to be happy or sad, celebratory or depressed. But sometimes pregnancy, birth, parenting, and life, did I mention I have a tween? Is a lot more complicated than that. And so navigating the complicated emotions of birth is really a crash course to a lifetime of conflicting emotions that can come with parenting children.
So then what was your recovery from the cesarean?
Yeah, you identify with that? Totally. Right. So I felt like I was hit by a truck and handed a baby. I was exhausted and in pain, and it was hard for me to sleep because between my baby and that stabbing pain, I couldn't sleep for any longer than maybe an hour or two. And I really struggled with breastfeeding. And I was so scared to go home from the hospital and manage the feedings on my own. And the thing that was really tough was that before my cesarean, I felt like a powerful, competent, self-sufficient professional. And after my cesarean, I felt so unprepared, so incapable, and completely dependent on other people to do basic things like walk to the bathroom and feed my baby. And I was really humbled by how difficult it all was. And in the end, I did struggle with postpartum depression. I didn't realize it at the time. And it took me 9 months to feel like me again. And while I was thankful for my healthy baby, I had zero interest in going through that again. And I knew there was another option, and I was committed to doing whatever I needed to do to maximize my odds of having a vaginal delivery with a safe mom and a safe baby.
So it sounds like you had other children, you had another birth.
I did. I had my little boy 3.5 years later, and I had a victorious home VBAC and met my little guy. And it was a 9-hour labor from start to finish. And while the last 2 hours were extremely intense, I like to joke that the F-bomb was my doula. I managed and achieved my goal of an unmedicated vaginal delivery. And it was so different. I was mentally present. I was able to immediately hold my son. I had no issues breastfeeding. And being able to eat and use the restroom and shower shortly after delivery made me feel human. And to sleep without waking up to stabbing pain for weeks meant that while I was tired, like all moms are, I wasn't so painfully exhausted. I felt like me with a baby, and it was an entirely new experience of motherhood.
So compared to the previous recovery, what was this recovery like? Can you put it into a few words?
Well, with my C-section, I was taking Vicodin 24/7 for the first 2 weeks until my husband went back to work in order to manage the pain. With my VBAC, I took a few Advil the first week, but it was minimal, and it was really nothing in comparison to my C-section. And at 2 weeks postpartum, still high from my birth, sitting on my hemorrhoid ring, which I jokingly referred to as the throne, I felt compelled to share my story and the facts. Because between my C-section and my VBAC, I dove into the online birth community and was so saddened to see so much confusion, fear, and judgment. And that's when I started VBAC Facts.
Great. And so where did it go from there? Where did VBAC Facts go from there?
Well,
from just being a thought.
Pardon me?
From just being a little thought.
Well, during that time before my VBAC, I was encountering and interacting with a lot of women online, and I was compiling a lot of those standard questions that parents and professionals would ask over and over again. And as I did the research, I would write up these answers, and then I saved them in a Word document. And so that way, if someone asked the same question, I could just copy and paste. Well, that collection of Word documents was the basis, it was the foundation for VBAC Facts. So when I was about 2 weeks postpartum from my VBAC and my breasts, which were leaking through my shirt continually, and my baby was sitting in my lap sleeping, I pulled out my computer and I bought the domain VBAC Facts and just started figuring out how to put together a website, and it just took off from there.
Well, that's great. That's good. We do have a question from Erin Davis, and she says, in preparing for your VBAC, how did you mentally manage the fear of the possible eventuality that you might not succeed in your trial of labor? Or maybe you had no fear at all, you would fail. I'm pregnant now, and I am confident I will have a successful trial of labor, but part of me fears if it does not work out, I'll fall apart and I won't be able to mother the way I need to in the aftermath.
Oh, Erin, I hear you. I hear you. So for me, how my brain operates is I like to know all the what ifs. I like to have a plan. And as long as I have a game plan, I feel like I'm in good shape. So for me, that means answering all my questions. You know, what would happen if this happened? What would happen if that happened? So that way I kind of knew the various journeys that I could take. And then once I knew that information, I just had to tuck it away in my mind and say, okay, this is the plan I'm going to do. I'm going to hope for the best. I'm prepared. I'm aware of the way that things can go sideways. And I just had to move forward with my plan. It's like when you get married, you know, it's like, are you immediately preparing when you get married for the possibility that you could get divorced? It's like you're doing whatever you can to support the fact that, you know what, I'm getting married. I want to stay married. And so I'm going to do the things that I need to do. And if you see yourself starting going down the path of divorce, then you start having to make different decisions and make a different plan. I don't know. Does that help at all, Erin?
I don't know, but it certainly was a good explanation. Oh, and she says absolutely.
Oh, so. Good. I'm glad. You know, it's hard. I mean, some women feel like thinking about that cesarean birth plan almost invites that eventuality, but I think it's a good idea. And that's something I had never done because I thought, oh, I'm going to stay positive thinking. I'm not going to do that. But had I needed a repeat cesarean, it would have been nice to have thought through all the things, all the options that were available to me. And there are certainly more options available to moms now. And to be able to, even though it wasn't the way that I would have wanted to give birth, be able to make it the way that would have been the most positive for me. And for me, one of those things, even when I had my C-section, I requested not to have my arms tied down because the idea of being constrained, in addition to already being in this scary moment where I was just really trying to relax, was a very unpleasant to me. And so I think it's good to be aware of what your options are if you have a C-section and be able to make up that C-section plan. So in the event you are that person, and most of the C-sections that happen during a trial of labor are not emergencies. So you will have time to do things like have the clear screen if you want the clear screen, or have other people in the room, or have your arms not tied down, or whatever you'd like to do. Most likely there will be time for that. So I think for some women like me who process information like me, it would be helpful to create that cesarean birth plan. So you know, okay, well, in the event it goes sideways and I'm not going to be able to avoid surgery, at least you'll be able to do things to make it as pleasant as possible for you. And then also get that support postpartum. You know, there's a lot of great CBAC groups out there for women who've had a cesarean birth after cesarean, and realize it doesn't make you a bad mom. It doesn't mean you did anything wrong. Sometimes luck just doesn't blow our way, and just be really kind with yourself.
Right. You know, and last week I mentioned before that I was at a conference in Indianapolis, and it was all about VBACs and how to actually make that work. And there was a obstetrician who I absolutely adore from Fort Wayne, Indiana.
I know him.
Dr. Stroud.
Yes.
And he drew the analogy between how we prep women for cesarean and how prisoners are strip searched when they go into prison. And he said that, you know, they take your clothes, they scrub you down. And I just sat there and I was in tears. I was absolutely, because I had never heard that analogy before. And it hit me on a level, and I'm many years postpartum. So, but it hit me on a level where I thought, there is no way I'm ever going to be able to quit this work, because it has to be done. You know, giving expectant parents this information, it just has to be done. It has to be done. We do have a comment from Nurse Collins, 57, that said, 27 years ago, I had an emergency C-section and then 2 VBACs. A positive, supportive provider is a must. My OB was amazing. And that, you know, you got to have that trust. You have to have that communication. Yes. You have to have that provider who is awesome and willing and everything like that. So tell me about your programs. Tell me about all the programs.
Oh, I love all my programs. So understanding VBAC and repeat cesarean is so much more than just understanding the facts. Pardon me. Because the facts are VBAC is a safe and reasonable choice for most women. But if that is a fact, then why is it so hard for parents to access? Well, that answer is political. So parents, and really anyone working with parents, have to know the facts, like the risks of VBAC and repeat cesarean in mother and baby, as well as the long-term implications. But you also have to understand the political climate, and that component is often missing in the VBAC discussion. Clarity is achieved on this issue and confusion is eliminated when we understand the facts and the politics and how those two things interact and impact access. Why, if most women are candidates for VBAC, only 14% have a VBAC after one cesarean. And that rate drops to 4%, only 4% after 2 or more cesareans. Why hospitals ban VBAC? Why some providers don't attend VBAC, even though the evidence overwhelmingly supports it. So I developed a program called The Truth About Vaginal Birth After Cesarean, which I presented throughout the United States to parents, providers, and professionals. And
Well, I was just going to say, since you're gearing this toward providers and professionals, does that have like CEs attached to it?
Absolutely. I became a continuing education provider through the California Board of Registered Nursing. So nurses, doulas, childbirth educators, many midwives, as well as other medical and health professionals can earn 6.6 nursing contact hours by attending the program.
Now, the way learners are learning today is not always in a classroom setting or at a conference. Do you offer these online?
I do. And the wonderful thing about online education is that it is so easy for parents who are home busy chasing kiddos or who are working full time or professionals who are on call to be able to fit in 15, 20 minutes here and there. And because sometimes it's really hard for some people to set aside 6 hours. I know that's really hard for me to do. But if I say, you know what, I'm going to watch a half an hour a day, that feels more doable. And so having the opportunity to do that in the comfort of your own home is an awesome thing. And so while I absolutely loved traveling and speaking, and I've been able to see so many fabulous nooks and crannies of this country, I really wanted to reach more people. I mean, there's only so much you can do when you're one person. And so last year I spent 5 months because I didn't know what I didn't know. And I thought, I'm going to bust this out in a couple of weeks, and realized producing an online program that's 6 hours long takes a lot more time than that. So, but ultimately, I got it up there, and it's now available at the VBAC Facts community, which people can access at academy.vbacfacts.com.
That's great. And you know, the other thing too that I wanted to mention and acknowledge is that a lot more hospitals are not paying for continuing education like they used to too. So that has had a trickle down effect on all the conferences and workshops and things. So, you know, online is definitely the way to go.
Absolutely.
So with all your programs, what are your goals for this?
Well, I have 3 big goals right now. First, like many providers and professionals, I want women to know that they have options. And I also want them to know that both VBAC and repeat cesarean are reasonable options. Everyone should be evaluating the evidence and making their own individualized risk assessment, and then making the choice that is right for them. So this isn't about declaring that one choice is right and another is wrong, or one is better than the other. But this is for each pregnant person to make the decision that is right for them. Second, I want everyone, I don't care man or woman, what age you are, where you live in the United States, I want everyone to know this basic fact. VBAC is a safe, reasonable, and appropriate option for most women. And this is important because planning a VBAC can be a very isolating experience depending on your community and how your family feels about it. Some women have to go online in order to just find another person who's planning a VBAC or who has had a VBAC. Other women have to manage extremely opinionated but completely misinformed family members and friends. So it can be really, really hard for parents to find support.
Absolutely. It sure can. And, you know, doulas are not always in our community, and yeah, it's just really hard. You said that you had 3 goals. What's the third one?
So the third one, and this is my massive lofty goal, but I am chugging away on it, is to make VBAC available at all hospitals that offer labor and delivery throughout the United States.
Now, I know that there is some question as far as where VBACs can take place. Some of the smaller hospitals may not have the 24/7 anesthesia. And can you talk about that a little bit?
Yes. So it's a common misperception that hospitals have to have 24/7 anesthesia in order to offer VBAC. The reality is, any hospital that offers labor and delivery has protocols in place to manage obstetrical emergencies, including emergency cesarean. And this same response is used in the event of a uterine rupture. No special response or equipment is needed. And on the flip side, there are large hospitals that have 24/7 anesthesia, which ban VBAC.
So now you're in California, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So what is it like having a VBAC there? I mean, what is like the percentage?
Well, it really depends on where you are and what hospitals contract with your insurance. There was a study in 2013 looking at hospital VBAC policy in the state of California. And one thing they found is that 1/3 of hospitals that have 24/7 anesthesia do not offer VBAC. They ban it. So in many cases, it's not an issue of staffing. It's not an issue of patient safety. It's really an issue of motivation. And the best way to rally the troops, parents, professionals, and providers, is to arm them with the facts. And what I have found is that when people learn what is really going on, when they learn what the evidence and national guidelines really are, and then counter that or compare it to what's going on in the hospitals, they get really angry and they mobilize. One study found that the number one reason why hospitals reversed VBAC bans was consumer demand. So we need to get consumers educated and fired up and talking to their local facilities. Many women want access to hospital VBAC, and it's an evidence-based option.
Well, yeah, it's kind of like back in the day when the natural childbirth movement happened back in the 60s and 70s, and childbirth educators, and I came in on the tail end of that, but we were teaching 4 nights a week and every other weekend, and our classes were packed, and it definitely was a consumer-driven change. Dads going into the delivery room or any kind of change, it happened from the consumer. So I totally agree with you that we have to arm the parents with information, because that's where the change will be made.
Exactly.
Definitely.
Exactly.
So what are some of the upcoming events that you have?
Well, I'm really excited because I'm planning a free live hour-long webinar called What's the Real Deal with VBACs? It's for parents who've had a cesarean and want to learn more about their options. We'll be covering 5 ways to emotionally heal from your C-section, and then 8 things that every parent evaluating their options needs to know. And if you want to be notified when this free event is scheduled, you can go to vbacfacts.com/pregnancy today, or, and this is a new thing I'm doing, I'm so excited, so check it out. You can text VBAC webinar, one word, to 44222, and you will be notified when registration opens. Now, I know we have a lot of professionals on the line, and if you're interested in workshops geared towards professionals, sign up at that same link, vbacfacts.com/pregnancy today, or text me, and I'll add you to my list and let you know when the next professional-based program is released.
Okay. Do you want to give that number again where they're supposed to text?
Yes. So the number is 44222, and you text the word VBAC webinar, one word.
Okay.
Love technology.
Yeah, I'm going to be contacting you about some of that, because that sounds really cool stuff. And I'm kind of a tech geek myself, so I'd be interested to see how that works for you.
Absolutely.
Well, do we have any other questions from the group? We're up to 127 people.
Oh, awesome. Oh, Sunshine Birth said she just texted. Awesome. Yay. Yeah, I literally just set that up this morning. And so I'm really excited, because regardless of where people are, if they download this at a later time and they're in their car, it's so easy to just text, And so VBAC Facts is now texting.
Awesome. That's great. Well, I don't see any other questions, and we've actually gone, I'm shocked. We've gone a half an hour over our time. I was only going to allot 30 minutes, but golly, I guess, we need to have an hour. So yeah, I want to thank you, Jen, for joining us. It's really great. Good luck with all your programs.
Thank you. This was wonderful. Thank you so much. I'm so glad we were able to get it to work. That's very exciting. So yay. And hi to everyone and have an awesome day.
And join us next week, because at 2:00 Eastern Standard Time next week, May the 3rd, we're going to have Bertie Gunyon-Meyer, who is affiliated with Postpartum Support International. And she's going to be talking about postpartum mood and anxiety disorders, Women's Maternal Mental Health Week. So it's going to be a really great show. So thanks, everyone, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye, Jen. Thanks.
My pleasure.